Let me tee up our next panel. I want to introduce our moderator, Matt Morrison. I have great appreciation for Matt. Many of you may not know him, many of you know him, but Matt is the CEO of the Pacific Northwest Economic Region, a nonprofit that serves public-private partnerships. It was established in 1991. So Matt, this is your 20th year, goodness. The members of his consortium are Alaska, the state of Alaska, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, the Western Canadian provinces and territories of British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. Wow. As a director of PNWAR, Matt communicates regularly with state and provincial legislators and members of states and provinces and coordinates on a number of topics. Amazing how they do all this. Trade and economic development, environment, sustainable development, energy, transportation, agriculture, forestry, tourism, healthcare, workforce development, homeland security, invasive species, my personal favorite, Matt, and border issues. The invasive species I didn't really know anything about. It was amazing. In his 20th year, Matt is one of the longest standing experts on how public partnerships can be used to solve real operational problems quickly and cost effectively. Probably 20 cents or 10 cents on the dollar when it's used in the right way. Matt lives in Seattle, where he and his wife have 4 children. Matt's a good personal and professional acquaintance of ours. Matt, thank you for taking the time. Really looking forward to hearing your panel. Welcome aboard.
Thanks very much, Tom. Really happy to be here, and I've got a great panel. I'm just going to introduce them, and we'll get right into it because the time is short. Eric Holdeman is a longtime emergency management director, the largest county out here in Washington State. And then he currently serves as the director of PNWAR's Center for Regional Disaster Resilience. And as you can see in his background, he is also a blogger on Disaster Zone in Emergency Management Magazine. We also have Alicia King, who is a very credible emergency manager, has served in the Office of Science and Technology with DHS, the White House S&T, Office of Science and Technology Policy. She also is an instructor for DHS, advisory board member for the Homeland Security Center of Excellence. She's currently with the Washington State IT Department, called the Washington Technology Solutions. And she is also an active leader in the CIRCUS program that we hope she'll be able to talk about, the Cyber Incident Response Coalition for Analysis Sharing. We also have Mike Hamilton, who's nationally recognized. He was the CISO of the city of Seattle and participated through many, many years, regionally and nationally, in cybersecurity. He was the managing consultant for VeriSign Global Security Consulting, and as such, consulted with Fortune 100 to small private colleges in every sector. He's the former vice chair of the SLT-GCC, which many of you know, the State, Local, Tribal, Territorial Government Coordinating Council. And we want him to talk about his current initiative, which is very promising, called PISES, which is the Public Infrastructure Security Cyber Education System. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eric to just talk about our regional view of public-private partnerships and why they're important.
Well, thanks, Matt. Great to be able to join you guys today from everywhere, right? I guess, you know, I was at state emergency management and local emergency management levels, and there's always this goal to engage with the private sector. And what I found, in order to engage with them, you have to have a mutual interest. And where that first started for me, I have a strong operational background, is in disasters. The private sector wants to know what's going on, what's government doing, what's the next move that's going to be made. And they don't want to only be getting their situational awareness from the media itself. So they're interested in a partnership where they can be in the loop just as other government agencies are, to know what's going on. And that's something we can do for them. And I just use that as an example when you talk about public-private partnerships in cybersecurity. What are we doing for them? What's in it for them? So many times I see an invitation going to the private sector. They come to a meeting and we talk about all our government programs and grant funds and that, but there's nothing there for them other than say, they're physically present. So what can we do to motivate them to do that? At Pinworth, Pacific Northwest Economic Region, we found cybersecurity as being a topic that the public and private sector together can engage on. Even back to 2004, we've had a series of larger workshops and by today's terminology might be exercise seminars. And in 2004, we did one on cybersecurity. That's way back when in cybersecurity perspective. And then really, I have to give a lot of credit to the King County Office of Emergency Management. And King County Emergency Management, King County is the Metro Seattle area. And they established a critical infrastructure committee to work on critical infrastructure issues. We know there's a high predominance of the private sector in critical infrastructure owners and operators. So that began that engagement. And then approximately about 10, maybe 12 years ago, the committee of different types of government agencies and some private sector decided to work on cybersecurity as a topic. So they've been at this a long time. And annual workshops were funded by King County Office of Emergency Management via, for you emergency managers out there, SHSP, State Homeland Security grant programs. And these weren't large dollar type of events. We're talking $70,000, $80,000. But there were upwards of 300 people attending a workshop. And this is just as we're getting started on cybersecurity as a topic. And the greatest illustration I can give of how this works by planting a seed, the state of Idaho had heard about this work King County was doing on cybersecurity and engaging the private sector. They came in, attended one of those cybersecurity workshops and said, we'd like to be able to do something similar in Idaho. And our real goal is to engage with the private sector. They had no connections to the private sector. And we recommended, this is Pinworth again and the Center for Regional Disaster Resilience, they use cybersecurity as that lever for engagement. They did, and really the rest is history. They've been doing this now for 6 years. 2 years ago, they had an annual summit with 300 people in attendance, and it wasn't all government. It was a great mixture of public and private. FBI presented at that, the U.S. Attorney presented at that. Last year, of course, because of COVID, that big events in person weren't allowed, so the webinars were used to continue that work. But it's a great example how you can use cybersecurity as a magnet to bring public and private sector together. I'd say the other thing about this for Idaho is they had the lieutenant governor take an interest in the topic. And he came to the kickoff event, and we're very familiar with elected officials showing up, saying some opening words, and then leaving. He actually stayed for a 6-hour period to learn about cybersecurity. He is now the governor of Idaho. And so they really ramped up their cybersecurity efforts, have a strategy, hired a chief cybersecurity official, and it's a great success story there in Idaho. And I just recommend, as you go forward, the other key piece that I'd like to share is thinking about this is Tom Moran was talking about, Matt, and really Tom, you need spark plugs. And that spark plug can be an organization, but behind that organization is an individual that makes things happen. And it isn't a one and done. It has to be an ongoing program, because we have a significant rotation of people, both in the public and private sector, but someone has to be I call them Sweden, the neutral Switzerland, neutral party. There's a convener and tries to find common ground. And All Hazards Consortium, Pinware, has been that type of organization with longevity now that allows that to happen. So those individual personalities also help greatly. And I'm going to turn it over to Alicia. I hope Alicia is on. I don't see her, Matt.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
Oh, there you are. Okay. So Alicia and I go way back. Wherever Alicia goes, there's movement in the force. She's not afraid of new ideas or tackling hard tasks. And I think you'll find, because she has moved around a little bit in the public and private sector, I think she has a depth of experience way beyond the number of years that she's actually been working. So I'm going to turn it over to Alicia and talk about one of these public-private partnerships where the other aspect is she's going to talk about Circus, and where you can get private sector to actually come together and share their innermost needs and concerns with one another in a private type setting that's not in a competitive business setting. So Alicia, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Eric. I really appreciate being here today. Some of my past experience, the majority has been in the public.
And your volume is low, Alicia.
Oh, let me try something. Hold on.
Might want to speak up or move closer.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Alicia.
Or she's on mute. There we go.
Can you hear me at all, or do I need to switch microphones?
Okay. We're not hearing you, Alicia.
Now you're on mute, but it was just low. It's the Seinfeld low talker.
All right, let's try that. How's it work?
Still mumbling.
Laura, could she call in with a telephone? Would that be another option?
Yes, she can dial in with a telephone, but she'll come in as an attendee. So just chat to us so we can identify the number, and we'll promote the telephone number to panelists, and she'll be able to get audio that way.
Why don't we try that, Alicia? And let's move to Mike, who also had a lot to do with the forming of Circus. So Mike, over to you.
Hi, everybody. And thanks, Matt. Thanks, Eric. Hi, Alicia. And hope you can get called in because I want to hear what you have to say. What I want to talk about is a public-private partnership that has taken about 10 years to evolve. And many people in Penware and King County and jurisdictions around Washington State, specifically around Puget Sound region, all have fingerprints on this. State government, state military, everybody has been involved. And first, let me just talk about the problem we're trying to solve. The problem, there's two problems that I in particular came across while I was working for the city of Seattle. I had been the managing consultant for VeriSign, and in and out of Fortune corporations, and watching everybody spend gobs of money to secure infrastructure. And my daughter was born in 2004. And if you're going to be dad, you can't go to work on an airplane anymore. So I took the job at the city of Seattle. And when I saw the contrast between what the private sector is doing in terms of investing in security controls versus what the public sector was doing, and the criticality of what's going on in the public sector, specifically local government, water purification, waste treatment, traffic management, emergency operations, counties do 911, elections, communication system for law enforcement, IT holds all that up. And my observation was local governments, especially the smaller ones, despite the fact that they do these critical things, we're buying firewalls and calling it good. Well, it's not good. We need to monitor our networks, and we need to manage the impact of what is now a foreseeable event. Getting a piece of crud on a computer is a foreseeable event. Getting smashed by ransomware doesn't have to be the outcome of that, and it's monitoring and response that are the keys to that. So problem number one to solve, local government is critical infrastructure and it wasn't getting any attention. Problem number two is we're out of people. I think everybody can agree that if cyber practitioners were $30,000 a year apiece, we would hire our way out of all of our problems. And it's not that way. So we got to make more people. So what we did in about 10 years ago was got some grant funding from DHS S&T, who are some real visionaries there. And we set up a regional monitoring project so that we could monitor cities, counties, and maritime ports on Puget Sound at no cost and have everybody's results on a single pane of glass. And so we had 9 cities and counties, 6 maritime ports, 2 energy utilities, and a hospital, all contributing data. And that worked out pretty well. We were recognized by then the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, who should be confirmed as the Secretary very soon now, Alejandro Mayorkas. And actually have been back to brief folks in the NCIC, and there's a lot of people that know about this. So I left government and started a company, and everybody wanted the regional monitoring to come back. So what we have done is we have stitched together these 2 problems we want to solve. So we are providing through the nonprofit Pisces Corporation, so Pisces Public Infrastructure Security Cyber Education System, we provide no cost monitoring for down market local governments. Local governments can be cities, counties, ports, school districts, can be lots of things. And in return for doing no cost security monitoring, we collect data from these networks, and notably, it's not content data, it's metadata. Source address, destination address, port protocol flags, timestamp, things nobody cares about. We don't read anybody's email, we can't see web pages. So it's the metadata we're pulling out, network flows, and IDS alerts. That's it. The data are made available to students taking classes in cyber analysis at 5 different universities. So we have student analysts acting as operational analysts for critical infrastructure for jurisdictions. Now there's about 12 of them in Washington state. Notably, the most recent university we brought on is Alabama A&M. And we intend to push further into the HBCUs. We are supported by Department of Homeland Security. CISA has about 3 years of funding. We are partnered with Pacific Northwest National Lab. Their job is to help with the sustainability model because nobody wants grant money. And in fact, later today, one of the focus groups is going to be conducted where we are going to talk to a number of people about options in a sustainability model for this. And in closing, let me just say, I would really love to see this emerge in Canada as well. You know, infrastructure protection, workforce development, and research opportunities have nothing to do with political borders. And we all need to make more people, and we all need to make sure that toilets continue to flush. And so hopefully Pisces as a public-private partnership with enough legs now to keep moving into the future can be a part of that. So thanks.
Thank you, Mike. It also is a great way for training new cybersecurity talent, right?
It is, because when they roll off the assembly line, you know, they got the book learning, they got their test taken like everybody else does. They have been in front of real world live fire, real time. This stuff is coming in. I'm watching tickets over here right now of students putting in tickets about, you know, hey, there's a city that's getting hassled pretty well right now. And so this is the real deal. And when students are exposed to not just, you know, lab exercises, but when there is a mission and a sense of urgency, yes, they roll off this assembly line. We've hired a number of them. There's competition for these resources. The private sector has caught on to what's going on here, and they're getting snapped up pretty quickly. So, yep, this is a very good training mechanism this is workforce development in Washington State. We hope to take it nationwide.
Okay, thanks so much, Mike. Alicia, do we have you back?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Gotta
Great.
love technology. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm Alicia King. I'm the emergency manager for State of Washington IT. I know Washington Technology Solutions sounds like it's private sector, but it's not. I really appreciate the introduction from Eric Holdeman. I have worked with Eric for a dozen or more years at this point, and in a previous life, I served as the Global Resilience Manager for Google. So I've done a bit of private sector work too, and maintain affiliations with DHS Science and Technology and a few of the other groups that were listed during the introduction. So one of our successes in Washington State is really regional collaboration. And you may be familiar with the Multi-State Information Security and Analysis Centers, or the MS-ISAC. There are discipline-specific information and intelligence sharing silos, and some of those are distinct for a reason. But obviously, being an emergency manager, silos aren't always my favorite. So the discipline-specific sharing sections were really developed so that it was a safe sharing space with federally regulated entities. So you can think members of the banking sector really aren't comfortable sharing their cyber secrets with people who work in public health, and that makes perfect sense. So for them, there are discipline-specific buckets. But one of the challenges that we started seeing, at least in Washington State and just the Seattle region in general, is that several disciplines would receive similar style attacks, and there needed to be better information sharing across those disciplines. So one of the things that we created, and I know the acronym is kind of silly, but it is a regional cyber and infrastructure resilience work group, and the acronym is CIRCUS with 2 A's, or pardon me, 1 A at the end and not a U. So that particular working group is really an incubator for public and private sector and nonprofits to share their insights on what has worked, what attack vectors they're seeing. It's really promoted a lot of cross-disciplinary collaboration. And I'll give you an example without naming names. Mike is usually really good about sharing some anonymized information about incidents that he's seen as well. So it's great to be on a panel with Mike Hamilton. I've worked with him for years as well. So one of the successes that we've seen, for example, I was seeing several of our cities report significant attacks that they were experiencing. And the CIRCUS working group really facilitated coordination with our federal partners. We work, of course, with DHS CISA, which is the Federal Infrastructure and Cybersecurity Agency. We work with the FBI. We work with our State Fusion Center. We work with the US Secret Service, but we also work with Amazon and Google and Microsoft and all of these large corporations that have their own entities. Utility districts, we can potentially work with them too. So all of those infrastructure sectors are really baked into that specific process, in addition to their government counterparts. So my entity, my agency, we're a standalone agency that is a peer to public health, that is a peer to the Department of Transportation, but we also house the Office of Cybersecurity and the State Chief Information Security Officer. So in our role, we also provide leadership and guidance in partnership with the military division, because we also have cybersecurity assets through our National Guard resources in Washington State. So CIRCUS has really been a great success story on how you can create a safe, contained sharing environment for those peer-to-peer conversations on what are you seeing? This is something that we flagged. How did you fix this issue? What are those real lessons learned? And then we can build on those lessons learned through entities like Penwar, or the group that Eric works at, the Center for Regional Disaster Resilience, through training and exercises and workshops. So I'm going to pause there and see if there are any additional questions, because I do apologize. My next meeting is actually a state briefing to our cybersecurity leads with the federal government. So I've got a hard stop soon, but I'll pause there.
Hey, Alicia, it's Mike. I got a quick question for you. CIRCUS, so hi. CIRCUS, originally, one of the intent was that if there was a regional a significant cyber event regionally, that the members of Circus had agreed, and their companies agreed for members to be volunteers to help straighten things out. And I remember that there was a couple of problems with indemnification, right? So an Amazon, cyber analyst going in to help put a dam back together is going to be followed in by 50 lawyers, right? And so there was a problem with that. Is that still part of the charter of Circus? Because I remember that was pretty hard to work out.
So we're still working on those issues. And first of all, great question. Thank you for clarifying. I am literally in the process of writing a grant, the Urban Area Security Initiatives grant, for some support that will, I'm hoping, enhance a lot of these processes, specifically that deal with cyber education and cyber planning. We are in conversations, the conversation at 11 o'clock that I'm having with DHS and our state CISO. We're hopeful that one of the outcomes of these conversations will be better clarification on cyber incident response. That has become kind of a bigger conversation, especially as we have seen a lot of our cyber, I would say cyber first responders sounds so cheesy, but functionally folks like yourself want to assist in these incidents. And honestly, the biggest issue that I'm seeing, I'm going to speak very candidly for a second, hasn't actually been state government, it's been the insurance companies. So again, I'm not going to tell tales out of school, but several of these large scale incidents, we've had amazing private sector assets. We've had the National Guard, we've had, like, again, Amazon, Microsoft, all of those big companies willing to help. Unfortunately, we've had an insurance company tell us, okay, once you notify the insurance company of an incident, if there's any additional notification that is not through them from their response team. So you think of this as like, your car insurance company would not allow you to fix your car until they send an inspector. In fact, you're not even allowed to tell them that anyone else that your car was damaged until their inspector gets on site to fix the problem. So that's the issue of notification and support is a broader issue than just having the team. So we're trying to go back to the beginning and kind of reverse engineer some of those necessary response architecture mechanisms. So excellent question. We are absolutely tackling this, especially after SolarWinds and the waves of phishing attacks that a lot of public service agencies have experienced in the last 18 months. So I assure you, we are absolutely on it, and I'm hoping to have a solution. No promises, but I'm hoping to have a better solution in 3 months.
Awesome,
Alicia,
thanks.
before you go, can you just comment on building trust with public and private in this space and what Circus did in order to do that?
Absolutely. So once upon a time when I was working with private sector entities and for private sector entities, I had spoken to my peers at Apple and Amazon and some of the larger corporations, and there was a really interesting myth about notification to private sector entities and who wasn't critical infrastructure. And a lot of that had to do with asset control and who was kind of in the catbird seat to provide service response to an incident. I had similar incidents occur, or at least a similar sentiment experience when I was working for one of the large ports, wherein the National Guard had offered assistance. Mike, you might have actually been in that meeting. And Eric, you may have been in that meeting too, where the National Guard came to the port I was working with and said, we're here to help. And the port was like, absolutely not. You're not going to hit our systems unless you have our approval. We will instead use the cyber incident responders to backfill kind of help desk administrative type roles while you solve the problem. So we clearly have a need, a persistent need for that kind of elite, alacritous, fast-moving response team, but we've got to build in those trusting elements. And Circus has been a big part of that. Pinwar and the Center for Regional Disaster Resilience has been a big part of that. You know, Pisces, as Mike mentioned, has been a big part of that. I cannot undersell the importance of trusted, established partnerships and relationships. Like, you can really make or break response on a lot of this. I'll be really honest, your state IT emergency manager is usually not the most top of mind person for the federal government or locals to go to when they have a big incident. But I'm the one that answers the phone and I'm the one that they know. So having that kind of, again, that incubator of Circus, those face-to-face conversations, that trust in virtual space has really helped us move faster into response because we all know each other. I know who I can pick up the phone and call. I have a lot of trusted agents, again, public, private sector, nonprofits, and that has been a huge resource for us in Western Washington.
Hey, Matt, if I could chime in here. I think to describe Circus, I know there's different levels where this cross information sharing can happen. It's at the analyst level. You get mid-level managers, and then senior policy types of people. Circus has operated at this higher level, and we've tried to help other states have this type of group, and they said, well, we have InfraGard, we have this, and what's the program? With Circus, there is no program. It was the chief information security officers for corporations and government come together, previously physically in a meeting, and there was no program. There was no presentation. They would sit and talk about what they're seeing in their systems, the challenges they've had, talking about perhaps the virus of the day, that type of thing. And I've only sat in on a couple of, but I could see the effectiveness of that, because when their counterparts were speaking, the other CISOs were writing, they were taking notes with one another. So that was just peer-to-peer communications, information sharing, no formal programs from that standpoint, but that helps build that trust also, Matt, I think. And I've got a question for Mike and Alicia, both you guys can take this on. In our trainings, we've done workshops. We have the analysts, we have middle managers, we have people who, like emergency managers, don't directly deal with cybersecurity, and then you got policy types things. And do you have to address each one of those separately in different venues? We found it challenging to talk to all three levels in the same setting. I don't know. How would you guys answer that?
You'll go first, Alicia. Did Alicia have to bounce? I think she did.
No, I'm still here. I was just
Oh.
kind of noodling on this. So I have really appreciated personal perspective. I have really, really appreciated having the opportunity to bring a lot of bright minds together on those workshops and start to develop some of the core concepts that we have used. So one of our original conversations about those workshops really included our state cyber incident annex, which is a component of our comprehensive emergency management plan. Other pieces of those workshops have gone into, I'm going to humble brag for a second. Washington State had the nation's first NIMS typed cyber incident response team resources. We actually developed, as members of Circus and others, actually developed the packet that went to the National Integration Center that became FEMA's national standard for NIMS typed ICS incident command system resources for incident response. So we would not have been able to do that if we didn't know each other. And part of that was Circus, but honestly, part of that was like PNWAR and CDR, the Center for Regional Disaster Resilience. Those workshops were really core to that. So it was helpful that I knew Mike. It was helpful that I knew Eric and the other players in that. But I feel like that's been a huge success because it wasn't just a one-way, it wasn't just a lecture format. They were actually very inclusive, integrative incubators for, again, ideas on how we manage response. And it helped us act through that. They were great dress rehearsals, unfortunately, for some very bad days for some very important groups.
Okay, Alicia, I'm going to hit you though. That's great information, but how do you address these three different levels I described? Or do you need to operate separately, individually, or can you mush them together if you're trying to build a public-private interface on cybersecurity, if you follow me?
Tell me the three levels again. Sorry.
Well, at the analyst level, I mean, they're really in the nitty-gritty side. There's the people who manage them, who perhaps came out of the analyst level or more than likely not. And then you got the chief CISOs and who are policy level people. And sometimes we've had the challenge of how do you talk to each one of those groups in the same session. I'm thinking you have to make sessions more specific to them. Like Circus really is this high level policy type information sharing. It's something we've struggled with.
All right. Well, I'll dive in there because I'll answer this in two ways. First of all, I'll say that the conversations that you have with policymakers, and I'll even go above, I mean, the CISO level is a level, but in briefings, senators, governors, generals, things like that, you do not talk about scary Russian cyber buffer overflow SQL injection. It is not, that conversation is not going to go anywhere. So there's different language, there's a different lexicon that you use. And at the policy level, you're really trying to create a business value proposition. I mean, even if you're talking to government, it is a business value proposition. The other way I will answer this is when everybody gets around the table to work in, and this is kind of what Alicia said, we have all known each other pretty well, and over the last 10 15 years, and we have worked together on some pretty big projects. And the one that I'll pull out as an example is this. The state has a comprehensive emergency management plan, and what we did, a bunch of people sat down with the military, with representatives from the state, with representatives from the private sector in the state, and we hashed out over the course of almost 2 years an annex to the comprehensive emergency management plan for significant cyber disruption. And it documents the fact that Circus is going to be a part of that. It documented the fact that the PRISM system, now Pisces, would be part of that for situational awareness. And when everybody is sitting at the same table, those lexicon differences fall away because we're having the same conversation. And nobody needs to get sideways with their their tech ego, because we're really trying to achieve an outcome here. So I hope that answers the question you asked, Eric.
Yeah, well, it's a great illustration. I would just share, and you guys could react to this also. It's, it isn't, we don't have a single silver bullet. We're kind of like the Lone Ranger, where on his gun belt, he's got a bunch of silver bullets there. And Alicia alluded to it. There's circuses, the work, Mike, that you've been doing. The National Guard in Washington State was very early on to the cyber mission there. Our Washington State Fusion Center actually has a cyber analyst who's been there a long time now as a real partner in this. And CISA, preceding the cyber emphasis, they had protective services advisors, had strong relationship, knew the players, and that has all, that collectively has built to a different level of strength for the state and the region overall, I think. I don't know. Any comment there, Alicia?
Yeah, I would fully agree with that. And to build on what Mike said, I see tremendous value in integrated learning. Because the truth is, I think there are rare moments when some of your policymakers, elected officials, executive level staff, I think there's rare moments when they get to actually see some of the operational thinking that goes into the response that they are ultimately responsible for, right? Because that's, I'm also a big proponent of policymakers staying at the policy level and not getting into tactics, but they do need to have an idea of what those tacticians are actually focused on. So I'm a huge fan of integrated learning. I really do see value in those holistic conversations. And I do think it's really important, again, to have that whole community comprehensive conversation about what our response looks like. So for what it's worth, Eric, I've seen tremendous value in the workshops that your team has put on for that reason, because I think it has brought a lot of those decision makers to the table, and that has supported buy-in for a lot of the programs that we're pushing, again, as practitioners.
Yeah, it's a great point there that sometimes we've had commissioners or city council members sometimes attend because they're the ones that approve the budgets. So that's been an important piece of that also. So great point.
Well, I just wanted to say that with the foundation of Circus, there's some great resources on the regionalresilience.org website. One of them is a cyber resilience survey and checklist that we developed first for the maritime and for the Coast Guard, but then expanded it. And I think it's being used by a number of counties in the state and maybe states, but it's a very good and piece that any organization or company could use to gauge their cyber resilience. So that's one thing I'd say. just throw it open to our panel for what you would say in terms of what would, if you had one thing that you think other regions should do to become have greater cyber resilience, what would it be? I'll start with you, Mike.
Support monitoring in local government. You know, I mean, solar winds, espionage. Espionage is a news story. Your kid turns blue and 911 doesn't work is a disaster. Okay. Think about the scale that you actually live and what we need to do to secure that, right? My resilience of my family is a whole lot more important to me than anything else. And so going down market to local government and making sure that, yeah, they're buying firewalls and they have antivirus and all of that stuff, but they're monitoring their networks and they're sharing that information when something happens so that the rest of the community is prepared. That's my piece.
I would just chime in also, when we think private security, we're always thinking the corporations, and we have some big ones out here. We got Starbucks, we got Amazon, we've got Costco, Google has a presence here. But when you think about what triggered this is, Mike, you're talking about businesses. Ransomware has been a huge issue, and the big boys can take care of that, but small to medium size businesses, we've done workshops with them, also trying to educate them, because no one's too small to be hacked from that standpoint. So when we think public-private partnerships, think about the mom and pop side of things too, that, 50 employees, 100 employees, because whether a dental office, they have records, they can be hacked for ransomware.
Okay, Eric, we got 2 minutes of Alicia. Alicia, what's your last words here for us?
So I will always advocate for education and empowerment. I don't believe in gatekeeping. I believe that cybersecurity is everyone's business. And that includes my mother. So that includes my mother, that includes my neighbors, that includes every community I serve as state of Washington. I'm a huge proponent for education and outreach. So one of the grants that I'm currently writing is specific for community level cybersecurity education and outreach. It is a major component of what we're referring to as digital equity. And I'm happy to chat more about that in a different presentation. But because COVID-19 has really pushed every single government and most of your communities into cyberspace, whether they wanted to be there or not. We've got a huge backlog of individuals that just don't feel comfortable using internet capable devices. So it is crucial now more than ever that we have comprehensive community cybersecurity education, lower the barriers to entry for safe use of these devices. One more plug, I actually helped found a free clinic that we run in the Seattle area that supports survivors of domestic violence and cyber stalking. And every single one of those survivors would not have to have gone through that if they had comprehensive cybersecurity education and they knew how to stay safe online. Those same lessons can be extrapolated to their businesses, to their places of employment, where their children go to school. Again, I will preach about it endlessly, but cybersecurity education is paramount, and be inclusive in your strategy. Thank you for having me today.
Thanks so much, Alicia. Really appreciate it. So we have a few minutes left. I think Eric was looking at any questions in the Q&A. Laura, do we go to the top of the hour, or
Yeah,
are we?
so I know Tom Moran has a question. So if you want to unmute yourself.
Hey, Matt, a question for you, Matt, from Penwar perspective. What's coming? What do you guys see on the horizon this year that is going to either already underway or you see emerging as something that's really going to take some time and focus for Penwar as a region?
Great question, Tom. Because we're cross-border, we're very much looking at the situation at the border itself, and Canada may be cutting back even travel between provinces, and we have airports that what I guess what I'm saying is we need to have digital health passports And that opens a huge can of worms in the cybersecurity area. So that, you know, we cannot move or travel without a valid digital passport. And we're going to open up new vulnerabilities in the cyber realm when we are carrying around on the cloud our digital passport. So
Wow.
that's one thing.
Wow.
I think, you know, the cyber realm is clearly the area that we're concerned about the most.
That's a big one. Great
Yeah.
use case. Very good. Laura?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. All right, guys. So we didn't have any other questions. So we're going to go ahead and head to our break a little bit early. And we're going to show a video in the meantime. So we recommend that you stretch your legs, refresh your drink, and we're going to start up at 2:15, or you can hang out with us. I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Matt Morrison, for being here today. We appreciate your input. All right, guys, we'll see you back soon.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.